Today we're here with Sarah Foot, who's the Dean of Christ Church in Oxford. Sarah, thanks so much for having tea with us. And this is the best tea I've had in years. The cake was wonderful. But I wonder if you can tell us, you're celebrating your 500th anniversary, not of your own ordination, but of Christ Church. Could you tell us a little bit about the situation of its founding? What was it? What was this place like, and what were the dreams of the founders as they established this place?
So there was a medieval priory here dedicated to St. FRHistS, who is the saint who founded the first community at this place on the banks of the Thames and basically set up the city of Oxford, grew up round her, and that was a very active priory in the late Middle Ages, dissolved by Cardinal Wolsey at the part of the dissolution of the monasteries, and in 1525 he took over its possessions, the church, which is now our Cathedral church, and built the big quadrangle outside, intending that this be the biggest college in Oxford, named for him as Cardinal College. But unfortunately, as you will remember well, Thomas Wolsey fell from power in 1529, and King Henry VIII took over his college, called it briefly Henry VIII's College, but after he'd created a new diocese of Oxford in 1542, he decided to join the diocesan seat and the cathedral with his college here on the site of the old priory, and set up a house that he called Ides Christi, the House of Christ, so Christ Church. Right. And unlike any other institution in Oxford or Cambridge or anywhere in the world, we are a college in the University of Oxford and the Cathedral Church of the Diocese of Oxford. So my cathedral as dean is also my college chapel in my role as head of the college.
Right. I mean, of all of us deans in the whole world, you are unique in your relation to your bishop and in relation to the college. And
Absolutely.
I can imagine, when you first arrived and started to study the governance arrangement, what struck you the most? When you first got here, what did you realize about being a dean that you didn't know before?
So I've been here, I've only been dean for 2 years, but I've been here for a long time. I was a professor in the university and teaching church history, and that post went with a residential canonry in the cathedral. So I came and got used to the governance first as part of the chapter, and a very clear sense that the chapter is unlike chapters of other cathedrals, and our separation from the diocese is marked because we are answerable ultimately only to the crown.
Right.
And that's what makes this such a special foundation, unlike anywhere else. It's a royal foundation, and in the exercise of its religious powers, chapter answers only to the crown. And that right and obligation is protected by statute.
Right. That's a kind of freedom that is important.
It is.
Especially in the United States, we're seeing the independence of even secular universities undermined in ways that we could never have imagined before.
No, it must be extremely difficult. I think it would be fair to say that in my time we have allied ourselves more closely with the diocese than in previous centuries. All the clergy in the cathedral now hold a license of the bishops, giving them permission to officiate elsewhere in the diocese, bringing us therefore underneath his canonical obedience to the bishop, and from the point of view of the wider church, ensuring that all of us are fit and proper people to hold those titles, and that there are no anxieties about our past careers or safeguarding issues. So it's about accountability and safety for us as individuals and for the church as a whole. But the senior priest inside the cathedral is me and not the bishop. So in procession, I walk last.
Oh, that's so strange.
Unless the king should come, or the Lord Lieutenant as the king's representative.
Right.
And it's the king's cathedral, and the king would walk last. So if the Lord Lieutenant is here, she walks behind me.
That's so funny. I love that. I mean,
Yeah.
we study these things and think about them. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just 500 years of Christ Church, and what do you think are some of the main contributions over time that stand out in your mind? I mean, we didn't tell you anything about what we were going to ask you, but just what do you think of when you think of this institution?
So Christ Church has been a major centre of learning for 500 years. King Henry VIII was keen that it should be a college apart from the diocese and apart from the university, because he wanted it, of course, to be a place where theological ideas with which he was in sympathy would be promoted, and building on the traditions of FRHistS Priory before them, which was a major centre for theology work. Obviously, the first people who worked here were working in theology. It's only with the creation of the modern university in the 19th century that the range of subjects being taught here were expanded. So now we teach almost every subject that it's possible to do in Oxford. We've had some extraordinary distinguished figures here. John and Charles Wesley, the founders of Methodism, were undergraduates here and were both ordained as Anglican priests in the cathedral before going away and founding Methodism. John Locke was a student here. The poet W.H. Auden spent time here. There are more of the prime ministers of Great Britain, more of them studied at Christ Church than at any other individual college. The list of people, distinguished people who've been here is just enormous. Have this very proud collection of very high achieving alumni from letters, science. We have a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry among our living members, a man called John Gurdon, who's just very elderly, very frail, but still alive, just set up a graduate scholarship in his name. And I got a lovely letter from his daughter saying he wasn't well enough to write to say thank you himself, but how pleased he was. But of course we're very proud of his achievement.
Yes, that's wonderful. And it's what I find about our cathedral relative to other institutions in the city of San Francisco, is that we're building on something that's already exists. And so we're head and shoulders above other things, because we've been working on the same project for 175 years in our case. Yeah.
So our commitment to academic excellence is, I think, the thing that has stood out across 500 years. And the other thing I draw attention to is music. Yeah. So there has been a choir of boys and adult men in Christ Church since 1526. John Taverner, the Tudor composer, was the first organist and director of music here. Yeah. And in celebrating our 500th anniversary, we're all putting very much music and worship at the heart of that. So at the midpoint of this anniversary year, we have a special service of Solemn Vespers where the boys and the men will sing music connected with Christ Church over 5 centuries.
I would love to be here for that.
And including a new commission from the Master of the King's Music, Erlyn Wallen, who's set a new Latin setting of the Magnificat for us.
Oh, that sounds magnificent. Now, I wanted, before we close, I wanted to ask you about the Venerable Bede. So at Grace Cathedral in the apse, there's two images of Christ in the lancet windows. Yeah. Christ holding a lamb, the Good Shepherd, and Christ holding the lamp, the light of the world. And next to Christ is Bede. And I remember reading his history, and I wonder if you can tell us something about Bede that maybe ordinary people didn't know, but because you're a scholar of Bede, you understand in a greater degree of complexity.
So you know Bede as an historian. He wrote the first history of the English people. He really invented the English as a people in the sight of God. But in his own mind and in his own day, that's not what was important in his work. He was a biblical scholar and an exegete, and he wrote a number of books commenting on books of the Old and the New Testament. Most of his later commentaries are on Old Testament works, and he was particularly keen to work on things that hadn't been, but where there were no commentaries already, so he wrote the first ever commentary on Ezra and Nehemiah. But he also wrote a very significant commentary on the Gospel of Luke, and he wrote a shorter commentary on Acts. His bishop asked him to write a commentary on Luke, and there's a correspondence between them which is preserved. And he writes back and he says, I can't do this. I'm too busy. There's so much going on in my life. I really don't have time. Oh, here's a commentary on Acts I did in the meantime, but please, you have to understand, I can't do this. And his bishop keeps saying, but I want a commentary on Luke. And eventually he produces it. And it's a testament to the importance of mission and evangelism. And if you want to find, there's just a new translation of it come out, and I've just read it all the way through. And it's about why it matters that the injunction that Christ gave to the disciples at the Ascension, that they should take the faith to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Bede believed that Britain lay at the ends of the earth. The preaching of the gospel on these shores, the bringing of the people who lived on this island inside a universal Catholic church, fulfilled the apostolic injunction to take the faith to the ends of the earth. So the apocalypse can happen. It has been done. His sound has been heard in every land. And that was what was central to what Bede believed. And his whole career is animated by the importance to talk about why mission and evangelism matter, and why you need priests and leaders and teachers who can preach a true gospel and bring new believers into the fold.
Yeah, and it's amazing to think that our understanding of the Bible is shaped by this one figure, this one scholar.
And it's amazing to me, and would be to think that at the end of a world that he could not imagine, there is this glass that commemorates this extraordinarily important mind who worked in this little monastery on the northeast coast of England and never travelled anywhere in his life.
Wow. And you're right, it really did go to the other ends of the
world.
The
yes.
new one. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to
Thank you
read
so
us.
much for coming to see me.
Yes.
It's been a great pleasure.
So Sarah Foot is the Dean of Christ Church, Oxford, and my name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. Thank you so much for watching More Good News.